Okay, and now it's time for our weekend recap. We're going to kick it off with the super flyweight title fight, the rematch between the defending champion Aleem Ruiz and the challenger Virginia Fuchs. And as I predicted, where Virginia won the first one, she would not win the second. In the first round,
I gave that one to Ginny.
Off of her movement, clean punching, and clean counters, where Aleem Ruiz was ineffective with her flurries, missing a lot of punches, and seemingly walking on quicksand. I gave Virginia Fuchs the first round,
and I gave Aleem Ruiz the second round,
landing 3 very good, clean, hard right hands within the round. Even though it was nip and tuck, I felt that Aleem Ruiz did enough to win the round. I gave Virginia Fuchs the third round off of landing several clean backhands where Aleem Ruiz missed a lot of her punches but still looked dangerous.
2 rounds to 1 in favor of the challenger after 3. 3 rounds to 1 after 4, with Virginia Fuchs moving well and winning the exchanges.
3 rounds to 1 after 4. 3 rounds to 2 after 5. Fuchs was still ahead, at least on my card, but Ruiz took the 5th, slightly better in the round, landing hard in what was a messy affair, and you could see that the pace of the fight was catching up to both fighters, as both were showing signs of fatigue.
3 rounds to 2 after 5, 4 rounds to 2 after 6, with Virginia Fuchs in the lead, at least on my card, moving and pot-shotting and landing clean.
4 rounds to 3 after 7, with Virginia Fuchs still ahead, but Ruiz catching up, landing hard and rocking Fuchs to the head and body.
That was a deciding factor. The noticeable difference in power between Virginia Fuchs and Aleem Ruiz, who was the so obviously harder puncher of the two. 4 rounds to 4, tie score after 8.
Gave the 8th round to Aleem Ruiz, who looked strong, while Virginia looked raggedy. Ruiz landed a big left hook in that round. It was the best punch of the round. The 9th round looked like a swing round to me, where maybe Virginia Fuchs is doing enough to win it, but I wasn't sure that the judges would give it to her.
Remember where they were. On the West Coast, in what was tantamount to Aleem Ruiz's neck of the woods, the battlegrounds. The crowd was definitely for Aleem Ruiz, and the judges too.
The 10th round was a more decisive round for Aleem Ruiz, bloodying Virginia Fuchs and busting her nose.
Noticeably fatigued.
Finding it more and more difficult to keep her shape as the fight progressed. I stressed in the build-up of this rematch that Virginia Fuchs, not being a spring chicken, being in her late 30s, and having not fought in over a year, it's gonna have an effect. And I think that's what we saw yesterday.
Ruiz won, retaining the WBC title. Now they are 1-1 with each other. There is a precedent for another fight, a rubber match, but I'm not sure that Ruiz is going to give it to her.
Boy, the WBC really fucked Ginny, didn't they?
Yes, they did, because her initial meeting with Aleem Ruiz was for the interim title. Virginia Fuchs was the interim champion all of last year, so that if at any point last year the full champion abdicated, which they did, Virginia should have been elevated right away. Just like what they did for Mario Barrios at welter.
That's what they were supposed to do for Virginia at Superfly. They chose not to.
Giving her some cockamamie explanation about not being able to reach her, what is tantamount to phone tag. What does it matter? If you would have elevated her and posted it to your social media, she would have found out that way. What I see is, you didn't want her to be full champion. You preferred that honor go to the woman she beat.
Which is absolutely ridiculous.
Fucking ridiculous, like everything else you see from the World Boxing Council. So now, Aleem and Ginny are 1-1 with each other. There's a precedent for a third fight, but I don't expect to see it happen.
The prediction stuck. Aleem Ruiz was able to wear out and wear down Virginia Fuchs to keep the green and gold title. In the main event of what was the Matchroom show, in the men's super middleweight division, unbeaten Diego Pacheco took on a very game Aleem in a contest that lasted about 11 rounds?
Veteran fighter and trainer Buddy McGirt making his debut in the corner of young Diego Pacheco, who left Jose Benavidez as a longtime trainer and was sort of in limbo for a while. But I knew, with Buddy in his corner, that's going to make all the difference, and that's what I think we saw yesterday against Emmanuel.
What we've seen from Buddy in the past the way he was able to reanimate Sergey Kovalev, at least momentarily, and how he was able to rebuild Callum Smith.
I think he'll be able to do that and more for Diego Pacheco, and we got our first glimpse at it yesterday.
I think the focus of the fight was to try to put Diego in the same sort of situation that he was in with Kevin Lele Saggio in his previous bout before this one, where he didn't look good.
Got knocked down for the first time in his career. Greatly struggled in the pocket against the game challenger.
There was a noticeable height differential between Diego and Kevin Lele Saggio, and thus there was a noticeable height differential between Diego and Emmanuel Aleem. And I think that was deliberate. That was by design. They wanted to put him in a similar situation to what he was in his last fight to see if he's improved.
And I think he has.
You noticed it right away how busy Diego was being with his lead hand, with his jab, that he was landing at will, upstairs and downstairs. What else you noticed about this performance is Diego made a conscious decision to go to Emmanuel Aleem's body. Keep going to the body.
As that will open him up for the punches upstairs.
Now, Emmanuel Aleem, to his credit, did his best to make things difficult for Diego, but this version of him was not flustered in the pocket like the one that fought Saggio.
No, this version of Diego dominated the pocket, throwing hooks, throwing body shots, uppercuts up the middle. The uppercut was a particularly damaging, effective punch for Diego in this fight, landing it several times.
He was busier with his lead hand in this fight, busier in the pocket, busier overall, more so than he has been in his previous fights.
He was not gun-shy, he was not flustered in the pocket, he was letting him go.
Credit to Emmanuel Aleem for taking as much punishment as he did and showing a granite chin for as long as he could.
Talked about the offense from Diego Pacheco, let's talk about the defense. Pivoting out, stepping out of the pocket, rolling punches off the shoulder, as Emmanuel Aleem would try to double and triple up on the jab to close the distance. Diego would step out and give Emmanuel the shoulder.
Rolling the punches off the shoulder, making it that much more difficult for the smaller fighter to get within striking distance. It was very smart of Diego Pacheco, while still putting on an entertaining fight, being defensible and entertaining at the same time.
I think that the third man in the ring, Ray Corona, allowed this contest to go on perhaps one more round than it needed to, because Emmanuel was taking a lot of punishment in the 10th. I've seen fights stopped for a lot less than what he endured in the 10th round. But they sent him back out there, and they let him keep fighting in the 11th round, where he was dropped 2 times.
Now understand that this was just a glimpse of the difference that Buddy McGirt is already making in Diego Pacheco's corner. Imagine how he's gonna look 2 fights from now, 3 fights from now, once he finally settles in. I already see the improvements. I already see the difference. It's gonna be that much better later on.
I've said it on repeat. What he did for Sergey Kovalev, what he was doing for Janibek Alimkhanalai, and what he's still doing for Callum Smith, he will be able to do that and more for Diego Pacheco, because Diego is younger than those fighters. The best version of Janibek I've ever seen was Buddy McGirt's version. Now that he's not with him anymore, don't you notice that Janibek is a lot more robotic and a lot more simple?
And think about what Buddy was able to get out of Sergey Kovalev in the brief period that they worked together. He got Sergey Kovalev his WBO title back.
Was able to rebuild Callum Smith, mold him into a solid contender and a knockout merchant in the light heavyweight division. He can do that and more for Diego, because Diego is still unbeaten. Diego is still very young, still a sponge.
With Buddy McGirt in his corner, I think there are a lot of people that Diego Pacheco can beat. A lot of fights that he can win. A tall, long-rangey fighter with some semblance of a jab greatly stands to benefit from Buddy's training philosophy. He can work wonders for that kind of fighter, and Diego is that kind of fighter.
Congratulations to him.
But he hasn't had the breakout night. You know, if you look at, like, I mean, Boots is an example, but he did some big crowds before he fought Zayas. But Zayas was like his breakout fight to sort of, you always need those fights. That's why I feel like Munguia is that breakout fight for Diego Pacheco.
No, pues mi respeto para esos viejones. Canelo, pues yo lo he mirado desde niño y lo admiro mucho. La vez que me invitó a su campamento esperé con él, mucho respeto y pues aquí vengo yo con todo, ¿verdad? Vengo también para hacer mi historia y pues cuando me den la oportunidad vamos a estar listos. Primero Jaime Munguia y primero Dios todo salga bien, pues también el Canelo.
Entonces sería el proyecto perfecto. Primero Munguia y luego Saúl.
Yo pienso que sí, pues sí, como le dije, hay niveles y pues poco a poco vamos a llegar. Tengo 25 años ahorita, siento que tengo tiempo para pelear con todos ellos y no nomás Canelo y Munguia, con Billy, Shiraz, todos los demás también.
So it would seem that both Eddie Hearn and Diego Pacheco jointly are targeting Jaime Munguia as a person of interest, especially now that Jaime is a two-weight world champion in possession of the WBA title at super middleweight, coming off that win over Armando Resendiz.
You can sell that fight.
You absolutely can. Anywhere in the Southwest or the West Coast. The Chicano versus the Mexican National makes for a commercially viable fight. And by now, Jaime Munguia is a well-known fighter among the Mexican fight fans. So if you put Diego Pacheco in the ring with him, yeah, you can draw a crowd to that.
Right now, that's about a 50-50 fight.
With the caveat being, Diego may be a ways out from forcing a fight with Jaime Munguia if Jaime is not receptive to giving him a voluntary title defense. If he tries to force it via the WBA, Uzbekistan's amateur standout, Bektemir Melenkuziev, is ranked at number 1. He's the guy in the pole position to challenge Jaime for the WBA title, where Diego is all the way down there at number 7. On the premise that Jaime is not receptive to giving Diego a shot willingly, he can try to force it via the WBA, but in doing so, it could take a while because he's ranked at number 7 with at least 6 other guys ranked ahead of him. Gives me the impression that even though the fight is possible and commercially viable, now that everybody's on the DAZN platform, it may not be next or even after next. So what should Diego do in the mean in between time? Take on familiar fighters and familiar faces like former champion Caleb Plant, former champion Jermall Charlo,
Armando Resendiz.
I say it all the time. The super middleweight division is one of the deepest divisions in all of boxing. I would argue that it's deeper even than the junior middleweight division that gets a lot of attention. There are any variety of good fights to make at 168. So even if Diego can't get Jaime right away, there are a lot of other good fights that he can have that he can win.
What may seem presumptuous, I would go with Diego Pacheco to beat all those aforementioned fighters right now. He can beat Resendiz, he can beat Caleb, he can beat Jermall, who was recently denied access to the continent of Australia.
Remember, he was supposed to be fighting next weekend on the undercard of Spence versus Zoo.
They wouldn't let him in the country. I think his criminal history might have something to do with it, though I'm not sure. In any event, he's not fighting. He is left without a dance partner. He would be the ideal step-up fight for a young unbeaten up-and-comer like Diego, who faced a lot of backlash for turning down a fight with Hamza Shiraz that would have lined him up for the vacant brown belt.
Right now, you could say that Diego ducked him. Right now, you could say that. But later on,
You'll see.
there's a lot of good fights to make for Diego Pacheco. Armando Resendiz, Jermall Charlo, Caleb Plant. What about Bruno Surace, who pulled off one of the biggest upsets in recent memory when he knocked out Jaime Munguia in Mexico?
Another potential opponent that makes for a relatively inexpensive, easy fight to make.
That if Diego can't get Jaime Munguia in the ring in a jiffy, no worries. There's a lot of other guys around that he can fight while he continues to build.
Build his profile, grow his stock, settle in with Buddy McGirt in his corner. I think this is going to be a long and fruitful partnership.
As it pertains to the Hamza Shiraz fight that he rejected not that long ago, there's cause for criticism there, at least momentarily, but it's not like the fight is off the table. It's not like they can't revisit that fight.
You think Diego wins?
May seem presumptuous, but I do. In dealing with these smaller fighters and smaller targets like a Kevin Lele Sajo or an Emmanuel Aleem more recently, these are tricky guys to land a punch on because they're so small. They make for a small target, whereas Hamza Shiraz is eye level to Diego Pacheco.
That makes for a big target.
He's easier to hit, believe it or not. I think that you could give Hamza Shiraz the edge in power. He seems a more concurrent percussive, more explosive puncher, punch for punch, than Diego Pacheco, but I don't know about his durability.
I don't trust that guy's chin.
They both have strong corners. Hamza Shiraz is now trained by Andy Ruiz, where Diego Pacheco is now trained by Buddy McGirt. In the realm of training and developing fighters, I think that Buddy has a bit more experience in that department.
Buddy.
The more time they allow Diego Pacheco to train and fight with Buddy McGirt in his corner, the more dangerous I anticipate he will become. If these guys know what's good for them, they better get Diego in the ring now, because later on,
Buddy,
he will only become harder to beat now that he has Buddy McGirt in his corner. And it may seem presumptuous, but I'm saying it now. I think he can beat Armando Resendiz, Jermall Charlo, Caleb Plant. I even think he stops Hamza Shiraz. The 50-50 fight, in my opinion, at least right now, because that could change.
though if it were next, the 50-50 fight is the Munguia fight. Jaime Munguia would be a big step up for Diego Pacheco, though still a winnable fight. The reason for it, Jaime is seldom ever the smaller fighter in the ring, in case you haven't noticed.
Think about it. When has Jaime Munguia ever been in there with somebody that's taller and longer than he is, that could make it difficult?
Somebody that could make themselves difficult to get close to for Jaime at 154, at 160, even now at 168. When has Jaime ever fought somebody that was taller and longer than he is?
I think that Diego Pacheco, standing in at about 6'3", 6'4", he could put Jaime in a very awkward position that he's never been in.
This could turn out to be one of the bigger commercial fights that you can make at 168. It's not all down to Canelo Alvarez anymore. There are other big fights on the horizon, and I think this is one of them.
Congratulations to Diego Pacheco. I picked him to win by way of knockout, and he did. And I think he's just getting started. I think he's going to beat a lot of people in this division.